All right, Charles, we're live. And, we've been live for like 20 minutes behind the scenes. So I'm hoping that we can bring our conversation to the forefront. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here, Charles, with me. And we were discussing that September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. So, how
Yes.
appropriate for you to be here sharing your story. And we were talking about a lot of stuff, black men and prostate cancer and all these different, we were trying to solve the whole world's problems. But, I, I am going to just have you introduce yourself,
Sure.
and then I'm going to start ply you with those questions I already plied you with before.
Excellent. Well, first of all, Sharon, I really appreciate the outreach and the opportunity. And I know that since I started this journey almost 11 years ago, the first couple of years I was reluctant to do any speaking about anything related to my cancer because I just didn't understand it
Mm-hmm.
at the time. But anyone that has met me and those who will see this recording later and those who know me now, it was definitely a shift for me.
Yes.
So I'll start off with my name. My name is Charles Rodgers. My government name, as they say, is Charlie. Don't go by that. Never have. Everyone knows me as Chaz. So when I'm on a formal phone call, say, all right, good afternoon, good morning. My name is Charles. Most of it, hey, Chaz. So I go by that. I was diagnosed with my cancer in 2013 on my 45th birthday in April. Was absolutely 100% shocked by that news. Didn't know what prostate cancer was and had never heard of it. None of the men in my family will probably speak to this today, especially none of the black men in my family ever said a word about being sick. Most notably, ever talked about anything to do with being sick from a prostate issue. It just was
Right.
not something that was ever brought up amongst the black men in my family. My family hails from the Deep South, Georgia specifically, more specific, Columbus. So they relocated from the Jim Crow South, in the 50s. I was born in the late 60s. And so it's just not something they ever talked about. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if I remember correctly, going back really quickly, I don't remember a time seeing my uncles go to a doctor. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
like literally, they didn't like doctors. It was a thing with them. And I think the history of black men and physicians going way back into the 30s, 40s, and 50s. So that ain't good. So talking about your health ahead of an issue, or talking about your health when you were having an issue, just was not something that was done frequently in my presence. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
one of the oldest. I'm the eldest of four kids. I have two sisters and a younger brother. So that was my history. So when I got diagnosed, it was a challenge. I had to act quickly.
Right.
Didn't exactly know what was going to happen on the journey. So that's where I started. And I'll just give a couple more comments real quick. So I was a health and fitness coach for almost 20 years. And so the interesting thing about my diagnosis was I thought my health and fitness had something to do with my cancer. I found
Oh,
out.
you mean something negative? You mean?
I partially, yeah. I thought
Okay.
because I was you can, when you're really strong and really fit, you can mask a lot of stuff that's going on with you, right? I used to work
Mm-hmm.
with clients and talk to them about that all the time. And being strong and being healthy and living as clean a lifestyle, if you will, as possible, as far as not eating a bunch of processed foods and working out, maybe at a minimum 3-4 days a week and getting proper rest and all these things. I used to talk to my clients about that all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
for me to come down with something like this, I was like, whoa, what am I doing wrong? Or what did I do wrong? If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh
so
yeah.
Jeanette, yeah, that really it hit me because I was like, wow, okay, well, I had to step back and take an assessment of my entire life almost, because I was like, I've been training and competing and doing all these things for years, and I still got this cancer. Um, I subsequently found out later it didn't really have much to do with it, but that was my mindset going in, literally like almost accusing myself of doing something wrong because of the diagnosis. Because again, I didn't have that information, right?
Right.
Where the
Right.
cancer emanates from, the cells, the PSA thing. I mean, none of that stuff that I speak, the language I speak now, the lexicon I have at my disposal, I didn't have just 11 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Never heard of it, any of it.
Wow. Yeah, so much. I mean, I thought we already spoke a lot before.
Don't be the same things.
You know, but yeah, you're saying some things now too that just really piques my interest. I'm not going to get into it fully because we have so much other things to cover. But one thing that you said was, you know, you were eating right, you were exercising right, and yet still, and you were a fitness coach, and here at a very early age, you know, speaking. You've developed cancer because we know there's a lot of push now about exercising with cancer, like exercise to avoid cancer, eat Mediterranean to avoid cancer, and you were doing all of that and you had cancer. So maybe I'll eat my fried chicken today. I'm just kidding.
Hey, come on now. Listen,
I'm starving myself from eating the good food.
Don't get it twisted. I love a good fried chicken. I have a really dear friend of mine. We went and had some fried chicken about a month ago at a buddy's restaurant here in the California San Diego market. And I swear to you, it was life changing. I was like, yes, sir.
But you know, you made that point, and you made that point to blame yourself. Now, what prompted you to go get tested? Because, like you said, the men in your family weren't talking about it. There was no one. There was no one talking about it. What prompted you?
That's a great question, and I'm glad we're recording this. Hopefully, because this is something that I want to reiterate. You know, specifically and profoundly. Okay, what I did every year since my 18th birthday, I had to get an annual physical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for college, because I was going to be a college athlete, and then also when I went into my boot camp for the U.S. military, you had to do a physical. So I made a deal with myself. My father wasn't really a huge part of my life growing up, and I didn't know a lot about his side of the family's health history, to be quite honest with you. He was a former, football player and, played at a very high level, was a semi-pro in the NFL and all this kind of stuff. But I still didn't know much about their family history. And there's been several guys in my family, black men in my family, that were professional athletes that had some health history issues because my mom told me about this stuff, but I never met all of them. And so I made a choice. I honestly did. I made a choice. You get up every morning with the two C's, right? A chance and a choice. I made a choice that every single year on my birthday, I don't care where I was in the world, I would get an annual physical. And so my kid's mother was like, you need to get a new doctor. You know how wives can be, right? You need to, okay, all right, fine. So I hired this new doctor, Dr. Rex. I'll never forget him. God bless him. And he was a sports physician and an internist. So I love this guy already, right? He both two things that I love. And when I met him, I said, look, I want to do the regular physical thing, but is there anything else? This is important. This is the question. I'll never forget this. Is there anything else you think I need to do, being, 45 and, 3 small kids at that time under the age, I think, of 10, I think. I'm getting after, running my business, and, their mom is working a full-time career, and we got a lot going on, right? Because what I didn't want, it's the same thing I would tell my clients all the time, Sharon, was, hey, you got to take care of yourself, right? You're exercising, which is great. That 1 or 2 hours a week that I see you, that's a good check-in. But what are you doing outside of the exercising that we're doing together? And that's the way, and I've always been that way early. I learned how to do this early in my fitness career. So going back to your question, I literally just said, hey, what else do you think I should do? He said, well, we can do this PSA thing, and we can do this DRE thing. And I was like, okay, well, let's do it today. And he was like, get the freak out of here. You're fine. You're healthy. And I said, I'm not kidding, doc. I'm serious. I know I'll pay for it. I don't care. I'm not kidding. This is exactly the conversation we had. So he was like, you know what? Fine. I'll order the test. Come back in, a day or two. We'll do the test. So that's what happened.
Wow.
And I kid you not, Sharon. I kid you not. The day that he set up the DRE for me, which is called a digital rectal exam. Okay. I don't know if they're still doing those today, but back then that was the only way. That was the test for polyps. And then secondly was the PSA. Hadn't even heard of a PSA. I thought it was something to do with the noose. The prostate antigen test, I swear to God. And he's like, all right, we're going to do this. I'm going to send you out for some blood work. Cool. Great. And then 72 hours pass, and then I got a phone call.
Mm.
Yeah.
That must have been a shocker, right? Because the doctor wasn't the one who was pushing the test.
Nope.
You probably didn't have any symptoms, because I know there's a question here that says, what are some of the early signs of prostate cancer that could be easily overlooked? You weren't having any symptoms. You can answer that in a second. You weren't having symptoms. You had an instinct, or were you having symptoms?
Here's the thing. There was a conversation in my house once about me having to go to the restroom or bathroom frequently for something, and that I might have been staying in the bathroom too long. But I also was training for a competition at the same time. So I was eating, resting, drinking a ton of water. I think I was supplementing a little bit. So I don't know if there was a direct correlation, to be quite honest. And I will tell you this, it definitely didn't rise to me thinking about cancer. Okay. Right. So, I mean, who knows, right? I just looked at it and said, I'm good. But no, there were really honestly no symptoms. And the thing about prostate cancer, those who are listening, who are in the field know this. Look, if you got a symptom from prostate cancer, it's probably too late. Okay.
So let me just reiterate that when you have a symptom for prostate cancer, it's probably too late.
There's a good chance. Okay. Not everybody presents this way. But what will happen is if you're struggling to go, that is to urinate, that means there's a blockage, and sometimes that blockage could be severe. But again, it could just be prostatitis. It may not have to. It just means your prostate's enlarged, and your flows, you're just not getting it out. All right, so they have medication for that. Yeah. Well, they do it. They go in and clean out your urethra, and all of a sudden you're flowing fine. So it just depends. But as far as like a symptom, it's like when people say I had a heart attack. Usually there was warning signs before you actually had a heart attack, right? Usually. Well, in prostate, there's no warning signs. And usually if there is, that means you're way past a certain stage, unfortunately. Right. And that is probably the most alarming part of this cancer. And there's a documentary out there about prostate cancer being a silent killer, because it's quiet as a mouse, man. It is quiet.
Wow. Yeah. So but we were talking about before that when caught early, it's one of the more, and I want to say curable, there's a lot long-term survivorship with that.
Yeah.
But we know that the numbers for Black men are not as great. Now, we talked a little bit earlier before we came on live, which I wanted to just bring to the forefront, because it's so different. So we always hear about social determinants of health. We always hear that, we know the numbers for Blacks aren't as great.
Sure.
We talk about access, but you had a very interesting twist on access. So let's talk about the access that you had, and we'll talk about access in general for what you're seeing with the disparity. But talk about access.
Yeah. Great for bringing that. Thank you for bringing that up. So, okay, here's the deal. Again, for those who are listening, look, I've worked extremely hard, majority of my career. My time in service was awesome. I'm glad I served. I had access to VA for that, so I had that VA. I had the VA healthcare system. I got married, and then I had healthcare from that side of my life. So pretty good access, great care, good doctors, access. I had access everywhere. Okay, I was very fortunate in that regard. I also took it seriously, because that's another part of healthcare access, is you got to take it seriously, right? If you go back to the early 2000s, I won't mention the name, but one of the administrations that did the whole Healthcare Administration Act, what was the primary focus of that? It was giving more people access to get on the exchanges to get healthcare, so they could at least go do a preliminary check, so they end up in emergency rooms, right? Because you don't what you go to an emergency room for is not what you do with the regular primary care physician, just getting a regular checkup, right? So the access piece is important, because I was given it and I used it. I took full advantage of what I was paying for, right? But unfortunately, there are people in my family line and others out there that don't have that kind of access. And what does that mean? And I'll just make this point because I think it's important and it bears repeating. And any physician that's on this and listens to this will understand what I'm saying. Here's the deal. Even if you have that great access, you still got to use it.
Right.
Right. And then there's all this information from people that have access because, people that have money have access. They got all kinds of recommendations for you. Right. So now you got to discern which recommendation you're getting makes the most sense for your care. Right. Because there's tons of information out there. I mean, I'll just give you a quick example, Sharon. I got an opportunity to go all the way up to Los Angeles, California, just to sit down with the head of men's healthcare in the prostate cancer space, specifically at the University of Southern California. This was, 12 years ago when I first got told that I may have what I had. That clearly came from access. I would have never heard of this guy, never met this guy. So that's important because what did that do for me? It validated what I was being told in the beginning of my diagnosis. Yeah. Most people don't do that.
I wanted you to share that, Charles, because we both talked about this off camera that we are, we're Black, kind of obvious. And that
I'm identifying today, Sharon. I'm gonna just go ahead and identify today as,
self-identify. And we talked about the fact that we, as cancer survivors, we both had exceptional care. We had access, and like you said, you did pretty well in life. You had the benefits, and we kind of didn't realize that this wasn't the standard for for minority, all minorities, right? Yeah, and we both desire for that to be the standard of care for everyone, because like you said, you now have sons who now has to be checked at 35. I have daughter who has to be checked earlier because of that. So we know that access, whether it's access, whatever demographic you are, access makes a difference, right? Having the access makes a difference to the outcome. 100%. You're sitting here 10 years later, right? Yeah. Doing well. And we'll talk about your work with Pfizer and your advocacy role. You're doing well because you had that access. You were able to fly all over the place, get proper treatment. Yeah. And we wish this was the case, which is what we're all striving for, right? Access for everyone. All right, let me take some audience questions. I've been very selfish. Rita says, what are some lifestyle changes you made after learning about your diagnosis? Which got to be interesting for you because you were already exercising like crazy. You're a fitness coach. You're eating well. So what did you change after that?
I even had to change that.
You had to change that? Okay.
I did. I had to change it right away because, here's the thing, Sharon, about my background. And thank you for the question, by the way. Here's the thing. I was extreme when it came to my fitness. Okay. I was training, 5 days a week. When my kids were of age, I was coaching them in sports. I was active. And I was running, a business. Right. Just to drive their mom crazy. I was on the go. Okay. I was waking up at, at a minimum 5 a.m. And getting after it. My days were wrapping up between 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. So that was huge for me. I had to really learn how to dial it back. My team, they were on my case constantly because I was so, I just was so, I was getting after it, right? This is all the motivational stuff everybody sees today on the internet. I was that guy. I was living that life. Again, as a fitness coach and a trainer. So I had to really dial it back. And that was not easy for me. Because during my treatment cycle, I got knocked down quite a few pegs. I was unable to work for a while. I was unable to focus for a while. During my actual radiation treatment, I was so gosh darn tired. And that fatigue that they warned me about took about 3, almost 4 years of my life from me, where I just could not be what I once was. So I made a big change for me. I had to change everything. I changed my eating. I changed my sleep cycles. That getting up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. thing, that went out the window.
Yeah, you rested longer.
Yeah, had to.
And what did you change about your eating?
I just wanted, you know, I decided one, you know, I wasn't eating a lot of processed foods back then, but when we had the kids, you know, you buy all that crap and put it in the pantry, right? All that stuff. I didn't touch it. Couldn't touch it. You know, the chips, the cookies, the whatever, anything like that that wasn't live food for me, I stopped eating. I increased even my hydration intake even more. And I sought alternative ways to get over my fatigue. What just happened? I lost you there for a second.
Just for a second, you said you thought alternative ways to get over your fatigue.
So there.
Yep, I'm still here.
Yeah, I had to get over it. So I found a couple different doctors that do alternative healthcare solutions. And I went and spoke with them about how to change my eating habits, how to I had some blood work done to see what else I could do because I was feeling terrible, right? Just could not shake it. And honestly, I just got to the point in the last 2 years where I feel like I'm somewhat quote unquote normal. Not nearly what I was before diagnosis. I don't think that's ever coming back, but it's close to that type of feeling, the vigor and health and non-fatigue that I could have. And that took literally 7 years, right?
Wow.
7 years.
Wow.
To get from so that's because people think, oh, you look great. I was like, yeah, you don't know. My insides are pretty torn up. So I had to fix all that. So yeah, that's what I did.
I'm glad you shared that, Chaz. I'm glad you shared that. Next question. What advice would you give someone who is newly diagnosed?
There's three answers to that. The first answer is before you answer your team when you get first diagnosed, if you have family, if you have friends, you need to sit down and you know, with the information that you've been given, and you need to have a real conversation about what potentially could happen and what's coming. Because the one thing that you will find out when you start going through your journey, okay, is that you're going to change, and you're going to change a lot. I had to face that myself. Most people don't face it. They try to stay who they were. By the way, at the time, doesn't work. Anybody that stays who they were, they don't make it because you're not going to be as high as you were before you were diagnosed, if that makes sense. So it's important that you do that. The second thing would be to accept the information you're given and then get a second and a third opinion immediately, as quickly as you can, either to validate what you were told or to find out some new information. And so go to trusted resources, you know, reach out to people that are connected, someone that may have gone through treatment. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the exact treatment you went through. It could be, you know, it could be a woman that's had breast cancer, something like that, but find out other options. Lastly, take care of yourself, dig in, because you and you alone are actually fighting this battle. Your family's cool, your friends are cool, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, the cousin, the best friend, all those people are cool. That's all great. But at the end of the day, if you don't do any self-reflection for yourself and really work hard on what this is going to look like day to day, week to week, month to month, you're going to have a struggle with this diagnosis because it does. Everybody's cancer, especially with the prostate, presents differently. I've met so many men who have told me different stories about where they were diagnosed, the part of the journey they're on, and how they're going through it, that I will never, it would be disrespectful for me to tell somebody it's going to be exactly this way because I would be wrong. Right? I would be wrong because everybody's lifestyle is a little bit different. You know this from your own experiences. Everybody's lifestyle is different. So the stories are going to be skewed just a bit. So to have parameters is what I'd say.
Good point. Great point. That was a good answer. I hope that anyone watching on the replay, you know, I like what you said about the journey being, there's people around you, but it's really you alone battling. And I also do like what you said. I agree with what you said about, you know, your life will change, you know, and you got to just respect that change. It doesn't mean necessarily for the worse. A lot of people come out better people afterwards, you know, but you have to make that decision. So that was good. And I think you already answered this. At your relatively young age, was there any suspicion for genetic predisposition, any family history that you knew of? And I think you said you wasn't sure.
I'll just touch on that. First and foremost,
Yeah.
as far as the predisposition to this cancer, again, I didn't know. I can only speak for myself. I didn't know anything about prostate cancer. I barely knew what a prostate was. No one in my family specifically ever said anything about it. I had a cousin who said he had prostatitis some years ago, and he finally decided to mention it to me one day. He came to my house to visit, and then he never ended up actually having cancer. He actually ended up being, he ended up figuring out a way to get past the prostatitis and never went into like a cancer diagnosis. Pretty cool. But that was it. There was no one else in my direct bloodline that ever said anything, about having actual prostate cancer of any kind. There were other cancers in the family, but prostate specifically, no.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of first-time cancers, first-time people in families getting cancer. So there's still some work to do as to why so much cancer. Like you said, at first you want to blame yourself as a patient.
Sure.
But then there's just honestly just so many factors that we can't control.
Well, I have an answer for that actually. Because obviously I've been doing a ton of research and I get thrown things all the time, and I sit on a steering committee for one of a drug manufacturer or therapy manufacturer, I should say right now. But I will tell you that what I believe personally as a survivor myself, having gone through this, is that we're starting to find these things faster, quicker, because of our technologies, which means I firmly believe technically, I just look, I think we all have cancer cells in our bodies. I think it's how they manifest them. I think it could be a combination of several things. You've got advocates out there, some would say zealots out there about certain things, about certain ways, what's happening to our foods, our waters, or this or that, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? Hang on, hold on. At the end of the day, we honestly don't know what we don't know.
Right.
We don't know.
Right. Right.
We can't control, existential forces when it comes to the foods that we consume, the water that we drink. I don't care how great they say it is. We don't really know, do we? We're not in the facts.
That's true.
So I think that's a big part of it. I think in my case, having served in the military, I probably got access to some stuff I had no business ingesting or eating or working around or what have you. So we want to be careful with that. I think there are people out there that are beating this drum. It's like, hang on, what facts do you have? Right?
Yeah.
I don't know if we have that we have parameters, we have information, we have studies. In a Black man's case, there's not enough data about this disease for us yet.
Right.
I'm going to be a case study. It sounds like, so yeah.
Yeah. Surprisingly, how many men don't know what a PSA test is compared to women who know what a mammogram is. We were talking about that earlier, Chaz. You were saying just recently, I think you mentioned that Congress had passed some proclamation about prostate cancer awareness, and it's like 20 years or 30 years after the breast cancer proclamation.
Yeah, it's really, let's put it this way, okay? The women's movement, the folks that backed, breast cancer. My favorite story about my cancer versus breast cancer was this. I had done, because I have a mother, okay? And I got two sisters, grandmother and the aunt and all these women in my family, especially as a Black man, okay? From the South. Check this out. I've done more events back in the day for women and cancer stuff than I can count on both hands and both feet. I mean, I've done every time. Hey, donate here, go here, do this, right? It's awesome. Look, it's great, right? But when it came to stuff for men, there was nothing. It was like almost like up in the last 10 years since I've been involved with one of the organizations I'm involved with, and I think Jamie's on. He knows of what I speak. I was going to start my own foundation because literally I couldn't find a single soul, at least in my circle. And again, Sharon, this goes to I had access. I couldn't find anybody who could talk to me about what I was going through. Actually, I take that back. and this is no offense to these gentlemen, there are a bunch of old white guys
Mm-hmm.
in Southern California who I met through my research, who had a group who sat down and talked, but none of them looked like me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yeah, this ain't working for me, right?
Yeah.
So why is that? Well, now, why is that important? Why did I bring this up? Because we're starting to catch up, okay?
Yeah.
This cancer is starting to catch up. It's starting to be more recognized, which is not a good thing, in my opinion, but with the cases being found and pronounced similar to the number of cases being found and pronounced, as it relates to breast cancer, now prostate cancer is right in line with that. That ain't a good thing, right? But at the same time, we need that same recognition, to your point, going back to the earlier question, with respect to the PSA, because that is at least the gateway.
Right.
It gives you, right? That's that early detection that we've been talking about for years. Hey, dude, go. Someone asked me this, what would you do if you had all the time in the world? I'd be on the road every other day, at a community, I don't know, at a church, at a barbershop, at a bake sale. I don't care. Just say, hey, look, when you get past 35 or 40, you might want to go, when you do your physical, you might want to get a PSA. Could save your life. Right. So the standard blood test, that standard blood test is just as important as what they tell you guys. Your doctors beat you over the head and damn near shame you. If you don't get your breast exam and go get your mammogram, I'm going to tell on you. Right. It's almost like that. And that's where we need to be with it. And we're not there yet. We're not there yet. And that's where we need to be, because it's extremely important. Honestly, Sharon, look, I'm sitting here today because of that. And that's only because I pushed myself to get a test I didn't even know I needed to get. Right. It wasn't something that came up in my primary care physician's office. Hey, oh, by the way, did you get your PSA today? No, not a word. Right. So that piece of it is like, it's so important. And because why? One, it'll save lives. Two, it'll start becoming part of the normal standard of care.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, our good friend Jamie, who recommended you for this talk, and of course, who was the head of Zero Prostate for a long time there. It says catching prostate cancer before symptoms in its early stage, when it's all confined in the prostate, the survival rate is virtually 100%. So it goes back to your point, Chaz, that the messaging has to be early detection, early testing. Even if there's no one in your family that you know about, and I guess I would say it's both black men and white men really have this the same levels. I just think that black men die more, they said, because we talked about the access, the socioeconomic stuff that that's happening, and also too because they get diagnosed late because they're not testing early enough.
Well, check this out. This is an important piece of this too. Mindset.
Yeah, and mindset.
Mindset. Let's get real for a second.
Yeah.
If they say, let's get real. Let's just say they get told they got diagnosed and it has to do with your urethra. Okay. Hello, that's your penis. There's another function that happens with that. And brothers ain't trying to hear that. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the other issue. And when I first got diagnosed and first started learning about it, and my doctor, the one guy I went up to LA and met with, and he said, look, you're going to take a hit there, bro. But guess what? This is what I love this. I'll never forget this as long as I draw breath. He said to me, you're going to take a hit here, here, and here. But guess what? I said, what? Because I was almost, I'm not kidding, Sharon. I was almost in tears. Right. I was in this meeting by myself. My family didn't go with me. It was a late night. I'll never forget it. And he said, but guess what? I said, what? He said, well, you're going to live. I was like, oh, okay. Right? So that was huge. Like, okay, let me come off. Let me come off of this ego mind trip. And let me settle into what's about to come down here. Right. Yes. It's not going to be good per se, as far as what a normal male, ideology is. But hey, I'm going to live today because I took that advice seriously and made those changes. So I think I cannot say that enough to anybody that listens to this. You're going to take some hits, man. Your life is going to change. And anyone that tells you it's not, is full of CRAP. Do not listen to that.
Mm-hmm.
or you will do yourself a disservice.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, yeah, and there's we're actually having a conference coming up. Jamie's going to be there with me on the 28th of October.
Mm.
It's about it's a really it's GU, but it's mostly focused on prostate, and it's just what you're saying is just so, you know, just so important, so important that, you know, that awareness, that education, that empowerment. Okay, let me see if I can have time for one last question. Could you tell us a little bit about your treatment plan and any ongoing therapy that you're on?
Yeah, of course. Real quick.
Yes.
So, you know, I went through my first diagnosis, had the surgery. Back then it was called the radical prostatectomy. I'm not sure if it's still called that.
What was it called? Radical?
Yeah, it was called a radical prostatectomy.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning they were going to take everything out as best they could, as they said. And so that was the first round of treatments. Then I had to recover from that. And then the recommendation was any other surgeries I had to have related to my health I needed to have before they had me go through radiation. And in my case, I can only speak to my case, I had to have I think it was my right hip joint replaced. Because
really?
I'd been going through some hip joint issues, and I had already had the left one done. And my team like highly recommended I go ahead and get the right one done. So guess what? I had hip joint replacement in between surgeries and moving my family to another city. So it was great.
That was a lot.
Yeah, that was a lot. So I did it, got through it. And then I had really intensive, almost 9 weeks, not counting the prep weeks, of the highest level at that time of radiation they could give me at the prostate bed at the origin of the disease, because they were concerned, that it might come back. And they were not going to have that happen. Their intention was to get my numbers to undetectable. And anyone that knows about the Gleason scores and the numbers, you know, you can be 0.01 or you could be 10. Okay.
Right.
I was 9.5 before surgery and radiation. So my Gleason scores were up there. And they weren't dissipating, which is why they were like, yeah, we're gonna remove this, and then we're gonna burn the you-know-what out of it. And that's exactly what they did. And it was not easy. Now, the problem with that was the challenge was the fatigue level was horrible.
Yeah.
It was 3 years of that, because they kind of undersold that to me. You know, you're gonna have some fatigue. Man, listen, that fatigue is no joke. When I say your life is gonna change, there was a 3-year window where I had 3 to 4 year window where I just couldn't get right from that procedure. And then on top of that, so I get past all that, right? Now I'm doing every 3 months, every 6 months, I got to 1 year annual checkups just last year. So remember, this is going over 10 years. I had episodes, and those episodes were internal bleeding.
Oh, wow.
And so I had that. Yeah, that was fun. Not a good thing. Okay. That came from the side effects from the radiation. And so what happened was I had to go in and do what's called hyperbaric chamber treatments. The best thing about that for me was that, again, Sharon, this goes back to our earlier discussion, access. Someone gave me information. I researched the information. I got to go to the team. I had a meeting with the team, my docs, their docs. They do this collaboration. And I was able to get almost 80 treatments of hyperbaric chamber. That was huge, because it stopped some of that internal bleeding from the radiation. Now, what did that do for me? It allowed me to not, because there's no Band-Aid you can put on your internal organs, right?
Right,
you know
right. Yes.
So that was just some of some of the treatment that I had to go through.
Well, you know, Chas, we could certainly talk some more because there's other questions about clinical trials, but we would be here forever. As Peter says, you gotta come back and let's dive deeper into this. I would love to discuss from the male perspective too. Peter's our scientist. He works at Total Health. He's our medical writer. He's a scientist. There's so much to talk about, really. It was a lot that you shared. I really appreciate it, especially sharing that with us during this month, Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. I mean, you were amazing to talk to. And I just, I have a son. He's 30, going to be 31 soon. So, it's just a good, wake up call for, all of us. Really, doesn't matter if you're black or white, really, just to be careful, especially if it's in your family somehow, Jamie says you're an inspiration, Chas, but love you, buddy. Keep doing great things. I totally agree with Jamie there. Chas, our show is called T Talks, right? Because the T Talks is based on a spin-off of the T cells. We the T cells are your fighter cells.
Sure.
So we like to give the guest, which is you in this case, the final word that you're going to leave with that man or even a wife or a girlfriend or whatever who is dealing with prostate cancer, whether they're at whatever stage they're at. They could be the beginning, the middle. They could be like you at the, in the rear view mirror. What is your parting word other than get tested early, which I'll say they can get tested early? What is your parting word for that person?
So I say this all the time. And I picked this up from a motivational talk I heard not too long ago. Every day in this life, you get up with the 2 C's. You get a chance and a choice. When you're given information, you have the choice to act on that information, and then you have a chance to change the outcome. And so when I was running my fitness business, I used to tell, my clients all the time, do something fit today. And what did that mean? What did that mean? It meant that I don't care what happened yesterday. We do not know what's going to happen tomorrow. But if you do something about it today, then you've made a step. That 1% better quote you've heard. Yes. If you get 1% better today, tomorrow's a new day. That's part of it. So whatever you get told, whatever part of your journey you're in, whether it's the beginning, the middle, because you're going to have setbacks, or the end. And this is the way I see it. People ask me all the time, well, you're done with cancer, right? I said, no, my cancer is in remission, but I'm not done.
Right.
It's in remission, but I'm never done. Right. I'm not going to ring some bell, jump up and down, throw a party. I've never done that. The party I'm throwing is the fact that I'm on the conversation with you today. That's the party I'm throwing, right? That's important. And so when you see the beginning of your journey, just know this too shall pass, and it will get better. And each day, 1% better each day, right? And when you need to stop, stop. When you need to go, go. And if you can't go, ask. Somebody out there will help you get where you need to go. That's what I would say.
Love it. This too shall pass. And as we're wrapping up, I'm just going to show a quick clip and invite folks. If you are in the South Florida area, we're having multiple conferences coming up, and so we invite you to go to totalhealthoncology.com and find a free conference. We have amazing speakers like Chaz at some of these, and it's all about empowering you and those who you love, who's been touched by this dreaded disease, but giving you the tools and the education to walk through this journey with some knowledge. And so Chaz, thank you for inspiring us today. I mean, I really appreciated you being here, and I really enjoyed the conversation. And until next time, we're saying goodbye to our audience. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching.
Bye, guys.